So, thank you everyone for being here for a very important topic. And I'm going to try and make it as least depressing as possible, given how dark it tends to be when people start talking about radicalization and weaponization of children. A little about me. I work at a think tank that is based in cybersecurity research that studies human-computer interaction and the impact of technology on human cognition, social behavior, well-being, autonomy, decision-making, and safety. Forgot this is the clicker. So I want to start by playing a little game with you guys. I'm going to describe a few characters that kids follow online. And I want you guys to guess if they are social media influencers or radical extremists. First up, we have this person who loves memes. He shares controversial opinions on social issues and loves exploring conspiracies, but just to understand them better. And he has a large following in the gaming community. Influencer or extremist? You can respond. Okay. Second, we have a person who does tons of travel vlogs, but peppers their content with subtle ideological messages about freedom and rebellion against capitalism. Influencer or extremist? As silly as this game sounds, the scary part is that it's not always easy to tell who's who anymore. Turns out that identities have been changed, but turns out that these were two profiles of people who are actually grooming kids into deeper echo chambers of extremist groups. Kids today aren't just scrolling through fun videos. They're navigating a minefield of manipulative content. And today we'll talk about how these seemingly innocent platforms can be used for darker purposes and how our adversaries disguise themselves in it. So imagine this. You're 12 years old and you come home from school and you're scrolling through YouTube. You stumble upon a video called The Secret Truth to the World. You think to yourself, oh cool, this is probably about some alien civilization I'm going to learn today. So you start watching the video. 5 minutes in, suddenly you're watching videos about conspiracy theories and flat earth. By dinner time, you're asking your parents if NASA is real. So I'm going to put you into the hot seat right now, and I want you to tell me, if you were a teenager scrolling YouTube today, and you saw these 3 videos, I'm going to give you the title of these videos, and I want you to tell me which is the first video that you would watch, which is the most appealing to you. The top 5 conspiracy theories that will blow your mind. How to get 1 million followers overnight. Why you're being lied to by mainstream media. Which one would you watch first? The first one? The second one? Second one. How to get to 1 million followers. Doesn't everyone want that nowadays? So what you're seeing here is exactly how radicalizers actually operate. They present attractive bait that looks just like any other click-worthy content. But these are the first steps into pulling kids into more extremist groups, as we saw with the influencers earlier. So how do we teach our kids and ourselves, because we would fall for it too as adults, to spot this kind of manipulation? Language is one of our most important skills, and communication is how ideas spread. So let's look at if we can even decipher what children talk about nowadays. Let's be totally honest. When's the last time, most recent time, any of you have eavesdropped into like a teenage conversation, like in high school? It feels like in order to really understand what they're talking about, you need Google Translate, right? Not only do they speak a language that our generation is finding hard to understand, just like the older generation found us hard to understand, but they're moving so fast with their technology typing, they can access and they can create and they can code their own apps at the age of 14 and 15. While we are still trying to like figure out how to unmute ourselves on Zoom, right? So how exactly are we as humans and adults prepared to manage these kids and to actually train these kids if you don't even understand the language they're speaking? So I have another little activity, a challenge. I'm going to give you 4 very common slang words used online. And I want you to tell me whether these slang words are radical pipeline words or innocent teenage rebellion words. Red-pilled, finsta, Chad, and dog whistle. So this is the answer. See how tricky it is to tell the difference? What seems like harmless slang can often be a gateway into far more dangerous beliefs. And our kids are interacting with these terms without even knowing it every day. Or maybe they do know it, but as adults, if we don't, how would we pick it up? I wanted to tell you a story about this girl. Her name is Angie. She's 14 years old. She's super smart, loves reading. Like most kids, she loves being online. She has a lot of online friends. And she has a very strong bonded book club online. They share YouTube videos, play games, they chat with their friends, etc. One day, someone in her book club messages her. Yo, what book are you reading? The Hate You Give. Oh, isn't that a banned book? You're brave. Where can I get it? You can find anything on Reddit nowadays. Is your mom cool with it? Or like, do you hide it? Yo, I found an app. It looks like a food delivery system. You can hide anything in it. What begins as innocent, normal conversation soon becomes more personal questions. Where do you stay? What does your dad do for work? Angie's just making a new friend who's trying to get to know her, right? There's no harm in that. But think about just from this one conversation, a groomer has made contact with Angie. And from this one conversation, he has deciphered 3 things. She's usually unsupervised. Her mom works a lot. She's adventurous. And she does things without telling her mom. Good target. Angie doesn't realize that this friend is carefully socially engineering her to gather information. Little by little, through the months, the stranger introduces ideas that subtly shift her thinking processes and plant seed in her mind that make her distrust certain people, groups, and ideologies. Before long, Angie is not only being manipulated, but she's also unwittingly leaking sensitive information about her family, especially of her father, who just so happens to have a highly sensitive military role. What started as an innocent book club conversation becomes a threat to national security. And Angie, she has no idea. She has no idea. Now, you might be thinking, oh, this is like a hypothetical scenario. What I'm going to show you is this is not a hypothetical scenario. Unfortunately, it's playing out in real life. Let's look at a case from June of this year. A Calgary teenager was arrested on terrorism charges that started when he posted on social media that he was going to join ISIS. This was a 14-year-old boy, and he was one amongst 4 teenagers, the other teenager being 15-year-old, who was arrested for conspiring to conduct a terrorist activity through being indoctrinated into groups through TikTok. This is another case that I actually explored very deeply last year. Jack Stashira, 21-year-old employee of the Massachusetts Air National Guard, who was arrested and is now given a 16-year imprisonment sentence for leaking top-secret military files in a Discord gaming group filled with teenagers who are obsessed with war. After 1 year of investigation as to why Tashira leaked those sensitive files, what they found out was he actually he didn't have any dark, nefarious purpose. He wasn't trying to like sabotage the country. He was nudged, and they had a tiff with someone in the gaming group who believed that he was not, um, he didn't have the authority to actually be in that group, or he sucked as a player. He did not understand war. And so he released these files just to show off what he had access to, just to gain social status, just to establish himself as a valuable member among these teenagers. As lonely adolescents, both this group of teenagers as well as Tashira have one thing in common. They were described upon background checks as being estranged from family and their parents, being socially isolated for a long time, and being emotionally underdeveloped. And their behavior, it's disquieting not because of its uniqueness, but because of its part in a growing pattern. We are seeing rates of loneliness, estrangement, emotional crisis, mental health rising amongst youth, especially amongst men. What is that doing from a cybersecurity or even a national security perspective? Since 2014 to 2020, Canada's national tip line has processed over 4.3 million child exploitation reports. And AI, deepfake, immersive technologies, they're now accelerating this exponentially. Are we prepared for this? So you probably already know why this is happening, right? When we think of social engineering, we think of protecting organizations and enterprises. We're thinking of protecting C-suite executives or government officials. But what about their kids? What about their families? Do you actually think hackers or social engineers don't have their way around to using the most vulnerable parts of their lives against them? And why children? Very obvious, their brains are still developing. Till they hit 21 years of age or mid-20s, their prefrontal cortex hasn't developed yet, so they lack sense in critical thinking, decision-making, judgment. And that vulnerability is what's being exploited. They tend to be more suggestible. They trust information more. Predators know this. Social engineers, hackers know this. Extremist groups know this. Misinformation campaigns know this. And they're specifically targeting children because they're easy to influence, and they plant ideas not overnight, but over time, so that they germinate to actually turning the children into weapons to the nation themselves. Think about it. Radicalization, polarization, violence, crime, mental health crisis, suicide rates amongst men, loneliness amongst men, they're all up the graph. A country doesn't need nuclear warfare. A country can be brought to its knees without raising a single gun through psychological operations. And we probably are already in the middle of this cognitive warfare. And it's happening not just foreign adversaries, but within the country as well. So, what do we do? The brain doesn't have a password. See, technical systems have their defenses. Walls are encrypted, codes are encrypted, we have firewalls. But what about the humans who design, oversee, use these systems? How do you protect the human mind from manipulation? The brain doesn't come with a password, and there are hardly any security patches for human vulnerabilities today. At MindShield, we are solving this problem from a psychological and design perspective. We believe that the solutions lie in the emerging field of cyberpsychology. Again, the study of human-computer interaction that studies the impact and influence of online behavior on thought processes, autonomies, decision-making, judgment, social behavior, security, and well-being as a whole. We are trying to build a new vertical within the cybersecurity industry, a tiny vertical called cognitive security. Cognitive security is aimed at protecting human minds in the digital world, understanding how cyber can be used to manipulate, and how to protect our citizens, especially the most vulnerable, from it. So I want to introduce one of my colleagues. She is the principal investigator at online child safety at MindShield. She couldn't join us because she was stuck in India, unfortunately, so we had to record a little piece, and I'll be playing that to you. And she will be explaining a little more about what cognitive security is and why it is critical in securing our most vulnerable today.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, carrying on from what Shimona said about cognitive security, let us understand how it differs from cybersecurity and how it is extremely vital in today's day and age. While cybersecurity focuses on systems, networks, and devices, cognitive security is all about protecting the most powerful computer ever created, the human mind. It shields us from manipulation, misinformation, and psychological tactics. Imagine cybersecurity as a bouncer outside the club, keeping out unwanted guests like hackers and viruses. But once you are inside, that bouncer cannot stop you from making poor decisions. What you choose to do is entirely up to you. That's where cognitive security steps in. Now let's talk about a darker side of our digital reality. Grooming is a tale as old as time. In the past, predators were limited by physical boundaries. Today, they have an entire virtual playground at their fingertips. And the problem is that our solutions are stuck in the past, clinging to outdated understandings and techniques. As we peel back the layers of myths around online grooming, three stark realities emerge. Here's the truth bomb number one. Completely shielding our children from online predators is a comforting fantasy. But it's just that, a fantasy. Reality number two. These online predators are not the cartoon villains we'd like them to be. They are chameleons, masters of disguise in the digital realm. Groomers have evolved, using AI to scale their effort and pass under the radar that monitors inappropriate content, maintaining conversations with thousands of children simultaneously. Each interaction feeling uniquely personal, so innocent that no red flags are raised until it is too late. Truth bomb number three. All children, especially teenagers, crave for attention and validation. For our digital native children, self worth is often measured in likes, comments, and followers. When that need for validation isn't met at home in a healthy way, our children become prime targets for those who would exploit them by providing attention and validation at their most vulnerable moment. It starts with targeting vulnerable minds by studying their profiles and online behavior. Then the groomer builds trust by posing as an understanding, non judgmental new friend. He emphasizes that he understands the child more than the child's parents and tactfully isolates children from friends and family. And once trust is fully established, the groomer is capable of exploiting the child in whichever way they want.
So let's talk about what current solutions are to this, right? One of the most common solutions we see out there are parental controls, parental control softwares. We take a controversial opinion and say that even though these softwares can be kind of helpful, they do not solve the problem. Why? Technical systems can be bypassed, but psychological threat doesn't come through technical systems. It can come through someone you know. It could come through something that's offline. These systems and softwares don't protect someone or a child from psychological threats. More so, it's even more dangerous than having people cautious, having people think that they're safe when they're not, because it creates complacency. So this idea of false safety could actually be accelerating the problem of children being targeted and parents being kept in the dark when that's happening. Trust erosion, parents and kids fighting. Let's bring it to the most human level, right? Parents and kids are fighting constantly at home because kids want autonomy and independence and parents want to control. What happens is if the parent wins those conversations, the kids don't give in, usually, and this is coming from personal experience. The kids figure out their own way to get what they want anyway. So they are smart enough to override all kinds of parental softwares. They know how to change your Wi-Fi router better than you, right? So it doesn't work. Delayed response, a lot of it is reactive in nature. And long term, it's not building resilience. It's only a band-aid solution. Still helpful in the short term, not the long-term solution. Also why? Because we are under this understanding that devices and man and machine are separate things. And this is a luxury that's probably only going to be there for the next maybe 10, 20 years, because eventually man and machine are going to converge and we're going to have chips in the brain. What happens then? What kind of parental software control do we look at then? And by then, it'll be too late to start teaching kids about resilience. Second solution, take away devices. Doesn't work. Why? Same reason. Children want their independence, they will find a way to get what they want anyway. By taking away their phone, you are essentially driving a bridge between the parent and the kid in terms of communication if something does go wrong. Again, you're not helping the child adapt to the technologies, and devices and man are not always going to be as separate as we have today, so it's not a long-term solution. The whole abstinent thing causes a lot more conflict. And I still remember that as a child, how this actually is very close to me, because as a child, I remember how terrified I was when I actually experienced something quite threatening online. I didn't have anyone to go to. Why? Because I was scared that I would get into trouble for getting into trouble by my parents. And then I was even more scared for getting into more trouble because I was not supposed to be having my phone in the first place. So what happened? I had to figure it out on my own. Luckily, a friend helped me. But not every child has the blessing to have a friend like them. So we need to focus on helping children adapt to technology in a healthy way instead. The separation between man and machine, like I said, as we merge, we need to start building the solutions now. So what can you do today in order to protect your kid? How do we instill cognitive security? There are 3 dimensions to cognitive security. It's not just about taking a course. It's an ecosystem, just like cybersecurity is an ecosystem, right? We have to change environmentally. We have to change knowledge, bridge the knowledge gap, bridge the environmental gap, and bridge the design gap, which means create design technology in a way that furthers security by design, change environments, which we'll go into in the next slide, and bridge the knowledge gap for children and adults today. So we're going to see Geeta go a little into what she has been working on, dedicating her life on, which is digital parenting transformation, where she talks about how to change the home environments to instill cognitive security.
This brings us to a new concept of authoritative digital parenting. Authoritative digital parenting is not about being a digital dictator or a passive bystander. It is about finding that sweet spot between setting clear boundaries and fostering open communication. We want our kids to feel comfortable sharing their online experiences, both the exciting ones and the concerning ones. And it's not just about setting rules, it's about developing critical thinking. We need to teach them to spot grooming behavior and guard against online exploitation. Here are a few key steps which parents can follow as authoritative digital parents.
So obviously, lack of time, I'm not going to go into every single step here, but you can find that later if you want to talk about this. But the idea is that what can you actually do today to instill authoritative digital parenting and start moving towards instilling cognitive security in your kids, nieces, and nephews? Go home today, find your kid, niece, and nephew, and you know, like the talk that we had to give them about birds and bees? Today, the conversation will be something like, so honey, let's talk about social engineering. And trust me, if it makes you feel any better, it's far easier to talk to kids about radicalization than to get them to open up other crushes or anything like that. Okay, I've like tried. So it's an easy first step to do. But this is more than just a conversation. This is a practice that needs to be instilled at home. How so? It's about helping your kids recognize emotional manipulation and manage fear, anxiety by creating a safe space for them. We need to build an internal pop-up blocker, essentially. When you get angry, suspicious, overly excited about some content you watch, stop and verify why. Second, we have to instill a sense of belonging. Every kid craves acceptance, validation, achievement, and friendship and connection. Give it to them. Otherwise, they will seek it somewhere else. We need to teach them to resist social pressure. And this is funny because this is something that is really hard for us to do. We want them to be obedient to us, right? But we also don't want them to be too obedient because then they don't think before reacting. Encourage kids to resist groupthink by following decisions that are outside the norm or questioning decisions of the norm. Encourage them to question, guide them not by giving them the answer, but by teaching them how to have the thinking process to reach that answer. It's a subtle difference, but it's a big difference. Have them ask, like, who did this? Why is this the way it is? Don't just say what they should be doing. Tell them why you believe what they should be doing and have them reach their own judgment. We also need to teach them how algorithms work. How they run, what are the motives, what's the agenda behind it, when they're looking and scrolling endlessly on their devices, what's actually happening behind the devices. We need to teach them that. There's a whole curriculum around this that we believe should be made mandatory in schools, and not just schools, but homes as well. And not just for kids, adults too. Just as IQ used to measure intelligence and EQ used to measure emotional intelligence, we now have DQ to measure digital quotient or digital intelligence. And it includes 8 areas: digital identity, digital rights, digital literacy, digital use, digital communication, safety, emotional intelligence, and digital security. And DQ goes way beyond just being about online safety. It's not just about preventing danger or like aversing loss. It's about helping the next generation become more resilient and thrive in an exponentially growing tech space, both professionally and personally. So we need to drill this on a nationwide level, but I've highlighted family level in green for a reason. And that's because at the end of the day, we have to remember no one cares about your kids as much as you without having an ulterior agenda. So we can put the responsibility to government and to companies or to technology, but at the end of the day, you are your child's strongest and first defense. And so you are responsible and the strongest link to make any difference. Also, 70% of a child's developmental life happens at home, right? So we need to change the environment from there. Imagine cognitive security instilled amongst all kids in a country. We imagine a world where kids see right through radical and manipulative messaging, the way we see through phishing emails. And this isn't just about stopping radicalization, it's about empowering the next generation to navigate the digital world with clarity and confidence. CogSec isn't about taking things away from kids as current narratives and solutions are being pushed. Instead, it's giving them the ultimate life skill, the ability to think independently and help them adapt to the technology instead. So let's work together to make cognitive security a standard part of education, conversation, and online life. With the right tools, kids can recognize manipulative tactics even before it begins. Let's be preventative. And who knows, maybe one day when we are all old, they will be the ones teaching us about online safety. That's all. Open to questions. Okay, thanks.